Hello, my name is Dante Renee, and welcome to the 10 Room Bizarre YouTube page where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more. Tonight's film is from Jess Franco, and it is 1973's, well, it's called by a variety of titles, but Franco's most director's cut version is Christina, Princess of Eroticism, also known as A Virgin Among the Living Dead. This is put out by Redemption Blu-ray. Redemption Distribution. They put it out on Blu-ray, and they have both cuts on here. This is the back. Even have some special features on here as well as like some tributes to Franco after he died, after he passed. So this is Redemption. They're in coordination with Kino Lorber, and they actually put out quite a deal of Franco films. They just recently put out Daughter of Dracula that I reviewed on this YouTube page. So we are looking at Virgin Among the Living Dead. But the original director's cut is really Christina, Princess of Eroticism. Here's some cover work right here. So let's get into this movie. This is 1973. Why the different titles? Well, a lot of times there were different titles for Franco's films. It's been said that Franco really focused on filming. He focused on having his eye inside of the camera. And the editing process and what happened with the distribution and the marketing and everything else really was not his focus a lot of the time. Now, I know later on, Lena kind of took some reins with editing some of the films. But that was later on, I think, when the films even got of a lower budget. But for this film, and many of his films, Franco was somebody who wanted to film constantly. It was somebody who wanted to have his eye in the camera. But in terms of the actual editing, in terms of the actual kind of marketing process, it's been said that he kind of moved on to filming something else. He would film and move on type of deal. But his main focus, it seems, from what I've gleaned from interviews with other cast members and producers, was filming. That was his main focus, was filming. So a lot of times his films would get changed, get hacked. They'd put footage in that he didn't film just for different markets, for different countries, for the horror crowd, for the erotic crowd, whatever was big at the moment. And you can see some of this information in the special features of this Blu-ray. In this particular case, his original, or close, the closest thing to his original director's cut was Christina, Princess of Eroticism. But what happened is that Jean Rollin filmed some, like, about 10 minutes of zombie scenes, and that became A Virgin Among the Living Dead, which is the title most people talk about. But Franco did not, film those extra 10 minutes. He was friends with Jean Rollin. They kind of did some things with Zombie Lake together. But it wasn't, his intention to have that in there. And I think they might have asked Franco to do it, but he wasn't available, so Jean Rollin, stepped in and did it. So that's the Virgin Among the Living Dead cut, which is 10 minutes longer. But if you want to see Franco's, director's cut, that's what I'm talking about today, which is Christina, Princess of Eroticism. So it's a little bit of background for you. Let's get into this film, 1973. You're going to notice some actresses and actors in this film that are in other Franco films, in predominantly during this time frame of the early 70s, and that you would see throughout the 70s. In this film, the lead, and you're going to notice the woman who plays Death, and you're going to see Howard Vernon, and you're going to see Franco himself in this film as well. We have essentially a girl accepting an invite to her family home for the reading of her will, a reading of a will for her father's death. Okay, that's essentially what we have. And we, in some form or fashion, it seems like, oh, this could be the setup for an old Dark House movie, like another review that I did on this YouTube page, Dr. Orloff's but that's really where the similarities end. Okay, this is a film thematically, philosophically, theologically, horrifically, sexually. This is a film about death. Definitely. I believe this was the first film that Franco did after Soledad Miranda's death. And there was definitely something coming out of him, I would think. It seems, when watching this film. It is a very poetic film. It is a very dark film. It's also a very darkly humorous film at times. Weirdly enough, very surreal. Very dreamlike, very nightmarish, very horrific. Very disturbing, and I would almost say it's too art house for the horror crowd, too horror for the art house crowd. It's way too poetic for most horror fans, and this is definitely, I would say, one of Franco's, one of his kind of true blue atmospheric horror type films, complete with all of the different facets of a horror film filtered through Jess Franco. So let's get into this film a little bit. This is really a surreal, real, dream reality type of film. Okay, if you like what Franco has done, with the surreal in his films and the bizarre and the weird, you're gonna love this film. This is the cream of the crop right here, and one of my favorite Franco films. Let's start off with the music. Now, it says on here that the music was actually done by Bruno Nicolai, and there was a soundtrack released for that that's kind of hard to find, but you might be able to find it on eBay and Amazon. Bruno Nicolai has done, a group of Franco film scores. Amazing, amazing scores. In this particular film, we have a creepy, dark, horror, nightmare collided with a funk bass line. That's kind of like the main cue, the main score song of the film, the main theme. We have carnival music, we have jazz, we have atmosphere, morose, solemn, deathly dark. We have sound design that is included in the music that's not on the soundtrack. Has anybody ever said this before? There's some elements to the songs, to the score from Bruno Nicolai that are only in the movie, and they're not in the CD soundtrack. They're not in that official soundtrack. Very interesting. And these added sounds, they intensify the cacophony and the weird, disturbing chaos of the music and the environment. The architecture, the environment of this film, an old inn, an old, hotel, inn, hostel, something like that. A mansion in the woods, a jungle. In this mansion, there are many rooms and hallways. And it is purely a mansion. Again, the production design for Jess Franco. How the hell did he do it for no money? You know what I'm saying? A marshy lake and the flowers in that lake. The trees, just the trees all around the mansion, the trees, and another mysterious kind of little home near the mansion. The style of this film, that way of everything, of him making everything look big, that Coke bottle vibe. Maybe he was shooting from the ground up, making everything look bigger, wider, more expansive, more surreal. He's definitely doing that in this film. He has zooms in a frenzy of cuts in the way that, there's lots of zooms in this film, reverse and forward zooms, and a frenzy of cuts in those zooms as well. Manic edits. There are manic edits and cuts in this film, even with the atmospheric, solemn music there. So there was a little bit of a paradox between that manicness of his style and kind of the slow moving atmospheric nightmare music as well, which brings a very bizarre style to the film. We have full nudity in this film, but no real sexual situations. Some minor sexual situations implied, but we have more more nudity and the sex of nudity and weird nudity situations in this film, where nudity is a focus, is a disturbing focus, is a surreal focus, is a dream focus, is a nightmare focus, is an art house focus, but it's also a focus of lust as well, in predominantly one scene at a lake with two men. There's nude torture, weird, bizarre, crazy. There's rape, and these elements make for a very unique Franco film, especially with the title Christina, Princess of Eroticism. You could have almost seen this film if made in the early 80s when Franco went back to Spain, when he was making films like Macumba Sexual and things like that. You could almost have seen this film become much more sexually explicit. And so you see an element of restraint, yet it's way more sexual than the normal movie fan would ever want to watch. It would make them very uncomfortable, and there are some very disturbing nudity, violent situations in this film that are very surreal, some things that you would have never conjured up in your own head before, folks. Seriously. And the violence in this film is very interesting. We have severed limbs with blood on them. We have a chicken head that's being held. We have dead bats. We have a hanging. You know, whenever I see somebody hanging by a noose, I always get very, very... it's very scary to me. And in this film, it might be the scariest. We have a stabbing ritual, you know, with stabbing and a knife. We have blood from the nipple area and mouth. Franco plays a very bizarre, one of his most outlandish characters in this film that just adds to the surreal vibe of this film, the chaos of this film, the weirdness of this film, the darkness of this film, but also is there some pitch black humor in here amidst this talk of death and philosophy and theology and life itself? Yes, I believe so. And Franco's character really epitomizes that here. He plays a retarded person, a mentally handicapped person. It seems crazy and insane, though, at the same time. Black humor and almost a tone of Tobe Hooper's old films like Texas Chainsaw Massacre and Eaten Alive, and even a bit of Funhouse. Poetic, philosophical black humor in this film as well. Perverted, nightmare, dark, solemn, powerful, man. Powerful. The theme of death, very dark, very contemplative film. You could have almost seen this film being made by Ingmar Bergman, but minus all of the Franco insanity and sexuality. I mean, in a lot of ways, this seems to me like a Franco Halloween film. I mean, it feels like a film. There's no talk of Halloween, but what I mean is it seems like a film you could watch, you know, late at night with candles burning and incense burning and the glow of a jack-o'-lantern in the corner, or, you know, just a spooky, scary, yet contemplative night at the same time. This is such powerful, chill-inducing sequences in this film. So profound, so genius, so incredibly genius. The hanging man, oh my gosh, I don't want to give away anything, but the moving hanging man, a chair disappearing into darkness. Wow. The representation of death and how Franco chooses to represent death. And the end scene of this film is so spectacular, so poetic, so lyrical, so slow and haunting, and it just gives me the chills. This is a film that seems to have been born out of, you know, possible fear and depression and loss and pain. But Franco has never stopped making movies up to his dying day. Even, you know, here he lost Soledad Miranda, but in his last films, he lost Lena Remey, his wife of many years, and he continually filmed even after she died. This is Christina, Princess of Eroticism. Thank you so much for watching the 10 Room Bizarro YouTube page, where I talk about films that I believe need to be talked about more, like Jess Franco's films. Feel free to check out all my other reviews on this YouTube page: exploitation, sexploitation, erotic, weird, bizarre, horror, Jess Franco, teen sex comedies. It's all here, folks. Cheerleader movies, all of it. Thank you so much. This is what I love. This is what I choose to talk about, and thanks for taking the ride with me. Please feel free to check out my own personal films at youtube.com/poopy-diarrhea. Thank you, and have a great night. And oh yes, the lead and all the women in this film are very sexually attractive and very alluring, and they were perfect for this film.